I'm Marin.
I'm Christy.
And you're listening to Hung, a podcast where we talk about true crime from the court of law to the court of public opinion.
That is right. And this last episode, we're going to be talking about Issiah Ross and what Marin has to add to the story, and hopefully is going to make a verdict more clear for me and see if we can't get this jury unhung. So tall order for you, Marmar.
I know. All right, so we are going to get to the only part of the trial that you don't know yet, which is the verdict.
Okay.
So the jury deliberated for 4 days.
Wow.
So
they struggled.
Yeah, I mean, and for good reason.
Yeah.
I feel like.
Did they come back with questions that you know of?
On the first evening of deliberations, the jury sent a note to the judge with a list of requests. They wanted a whiteboard or a large pad of paper on a stand. So that may suggest they were like trying to map things out, or
right.
Timelines, wound locations, whatever. They also requested to view the victim's autopsy reports and separately reviewed video, photos, and cell phone data. The deliberations were disrupted by a winter storm. So they began January 22nd. There was a 4-day recess due to a winter storm. And then when they returned, it was their third day of actual deliberation. So it was 3 or 4 days of actual deliberation. For Devin Clark, in the charge of first-degree murder, he was found not guilty. In the charge of second-degree murder, he was found guilty.
Okay, so that is
with malice but no forethought and maybe excessive force.
Yeah. Okay. So second-degree murder, guilty.
Yes.
Okay.
And then for Lyric Woods, ended in a mistrial.
Oh.
Jury split 8-4. So 8.
I mean, I get that. It's like it is kind of unclear, you know?
Yeah. 8, I think, were for guilty and 4 were for not guilty. I feel like it's kind of a weird mix of things, because how do you find him guilty of second degree murder with Devin, but not guilty of murdering Lyric? It feels like if you're going with Devin killed Lyric, then you would have to go with manslaughter or self-defense,
so voluntary manslaughter.
Voluntary.
Or I think it's probably that the manslaughter one is without malice, and I think because of
all the shots.
Yeah, that they might have
force.
said, well, I think we maybe can say it's with malice, so even if it was started with some self-defense, that the... I mean, still that took me to involuntary manslaughter, but I think maybe if you read the actual definition, maybe you do have to elevate it.
Well, it's interesting because I don't know if it feels like it could be considered malice if you believe he just watched him kill another person.
Right.
What level of force is like, okay, that was too much force now.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Like...
No, I agree. I can see why it's like, yeah, well, you're just trying to survive and you're not really processing anymore. It's just happening.
Right.
So...
It wasn't a thought of like, let me do a couple more shots. Yeah. I think he's done, but I don't know. Unless you believe he maybe came up and did shoot him at least a couple more times to make sure he was dead later.
I mean, it doesn't make sense to me that he shot Lyric again at the end, because the shots don't make sense to have been while she's laying on the ground on her back. Devin, if he's laying on his stomach and additional shots are fired, that does make sense, and then turning him over. So
yeah. So then as far as sentencing, he was sentenced to the maximum end of the spectrum there, 241 months to 300 months, so about 20 to 25 years. It is worth noting that the defense, right after sentencing, claimed they are planning on pursuing a retrial for Lyric.
So the prosecution said they were going to pursue a retrial?
Whatever I said. I meant prosecution, yeah.
I was like thinking the defense was going to immediately proceed with an appeal, which
is true as well. The defense also said, we intend to appeal. So now, will those things actually happen or not? I don't know. So with him already being in prison for 20 to 25 years, like that was a pretty big split. I mean, 8-4. Will they actually pursue it? I don't know that they could present it in a way that would eliminate more reasonable doubt.
Right, you still have to include the circumstances with Devin.
And could you even, I guess you could, because it was the same the same event, right?
Well, and you probably could even say that he was found guilty of the murder of Devin Clark. You wouldn't necessarily have to say that they couldn't decide about Lyric. They could just say he was tried and found guilty in the death of Devin Clark. We're here to talk about Lyric Woods,
right?
But you'd still have to describe the situation around it. So,
yeah.
But it's a tough situation. I don't know how you convince a jury.
All you have is first degree or nothing. Nothing else fits.
Maybe they do change it, the idea of second degree or something, that he just in a fit of passion or something, and that it wasn't premeditated.
Right.
But I don't know.
Yeah. Some background information on Issiah. So as we know, he was 17 at the time of the crimes. The trial happened 4 years later, so he was 21 during the trial, and I assume in jail
The whole
this whole
time.
time. So
It was interesting, though, seeing him. He was super tall
yeah.
when he was on trial, which I thought probably gives a different image than if it's like when you were 17 and you were 5'10" and 140 pounds, and now you're, I'm not sure how tall he is right now, but he looked pretty tall. He was way taller than his attorney, I'll tell you.
Okay.
Way taller.
Maybe his attorney was tiny. Just kidding. So he was originally from Delaware, like we said, Middletown, Delaware. He moved to North Carolina after getting into some sort of trouble and kind of looking for a fresh start, but the record is sealed because he's a juvenile, so we have no idea what that was. I assume probably nothing super violent, or otherwise I don't think he'd be allowed to leave.
Some misdemeanor.
Yeah. And then he moved to Mebane. What I have is around 2021. I don't know if there's different info there, but he moved in with his mom, and it seems like, I mean, the school year had just started. So when the deaths occurred, I think school year had been going on for
Well, this is 2022 that the shootings happened, so he'd been in school for a year
beforehand.
Yeah, so he met Devin that summer that he moved there of 2021. And he went through the whole school year, and then 2022 school year had started, and it was only a few weeks into the school year. And he probably was a junior, and Devin was a senior.
I think that's true.
And Lyric was a freshman, but in a different school.
Yeah. So, and there's still question there. Nobody really knows how Devin and Lyric ever met. Because, like you said, none of her friends say that they knew about him. Apparently, Jadizi might have known about Lyric just based on that one word, that.
Right.
But who knows? And he worked at Bojangles. I don't even know what that is. I think maybe a restaurant.
Fried chicken fast food chain in the South.
Yeah, but he didn't have a driver's license, like we talked about. And something that could maybe turn public feeling against him is the fact that, like, it is a small town. He's not really from here, you know? Not that what the public thought had anything to do with the jury, but one thing that is kind of interesting, I mentioned at the end of our last episode that we were going to talk about something that he did shortly after the events of that night. He was a self-proclaimed rapper on SoundCloud.
Eyes opening wide.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. He dropped 5 songs in the days after the events of that night, and they were kind of violent. References to, you know, having a new Glock, aiming for the head, blood in his Acura, and something he can't talk about. So we will listen to them. I don't think we'll put them on the podcast, but his handle, actually, I tried to look up the handle he was under, but now it's just under Issiah on there, but it's still out there on SoundCloud.
I just can't believe SoundCloud is still around. I thought that had died a long time ago. I
feel like it still is dead, but anybody can post on it. So, I mean, I guess it's just easier to just upload something to it. So this one is called Glass.
Deadshot, maybe that's why every time I up it for the headshots. Lime green when I up the beam, using when it's day. I don't fuck with red dots, say headshots. If it want a nigga with your bitch, bust on the head top. I was riding around with a new Glock, riding around with a brand new dot. I switch it up every time like a fucking beat, got these nigga mad. Posted up with that ripper on me, tryna pop a nigga like a tag. She got that X pills in her back pocket, but 112 coming in her ass. Rockin' that fake chain, I'ma take it, nigga, those ain't rocks, I can see the glass.
And then this is another one. These are like the 2 that are considered to have things that might be related.
I got red inside my cup, look like I'm sipping on blood. So much red inside my cup, like in that actor, not trust. Got some shit that I can't talk about, I cannot discuss. Tell her mama, stand up, nigga, no, you can't sit with us.
But to be fair, he had songs released before that also had violent themes, and that genre of music will have those themes in it, whether it's
And we
real
know he
or
didn't
not.
have an Acura
or a Glock.
or a car at all.
Yeah, right. Or a license.
He's like,
So-
yeah, but talking about blood in your GMC Traverse doesn't sound
it doesn't
very
sound
cool.
as cool as Acura, right?
So when did he supposedly upload these?
He uploaded these September 19th. So a couple
would
days
he-
later. I feel like he had to have recorded them before.
I agree, because I'm like, okay, this is on the early morning of the 17th. He goes home. His mom's pissed at him. He's gathering his stuff. He goes to Antoine's. He's sitting outside on the porch most of the day, trying
Recording.
to, right, on his
On his
phone.
phone.
Well, I guess he could have on Sunday while Antoine is out at church and stuff, but does he have equipment that he could actually be doing that?
I
Maybe.
mean, he has his stuff in garbage bags. I just don't feel...
And a suitcase.
And a suitcase. But, I mean, the timing just is a little weird. Like, I think it's possible that he did it.
Right,
Recorded
so
them-
if it was after the events, he would have had to record them on the day of the 18th when the bodies were found while Antoine was away at church,
Right.
and all 5 songs,
Right. All 5.
and produce them all because he's on his way to Raleigh at, say, 8 o'clock. He doesn't get on the bus until about 10. He's on the bus all night long. He gets to Baltimore the next morning. His sister picks him up, takes him to her house in Delaware. When does this recording take place?
Right.
It
And-
just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, certainly poor taste to if he recorded these beforehand and then said, I'm going to upload these after all of that happened.
Right. I think the first song in particular, Glass, because he's talking about a guy and his girlfriend and talking about both people and talking about headshots and all of that. And like, that's the one that I think is the most damning. I
Right.
mean, the other one is just like stuff I can't talk about, but that's the only real.
Yeah. Well, and at the very least, it presents a different picture than that sounds proper.
Right.
Right. But he's also a teenager making stupid
Yeah.
SoundCloud rap. So
Yeah.
I think it's definitely in poor taste.
Yeah. And bad idea to upload it right then. So I can see, maybe your mind's in a, like, you're just kind of, whatever. I don't know.
Yeah. It's just interesting.
Dumb.
But it wasn't enough for them to include it in the trial. There was a witness that the prosecution wanted to put on the stand.
Okay.
But they kind of proposed this witness during the trial, and it was Stan Dean, which is Lyric's grandfather.
Oh, okay.
And they were going to put him on the stand because he is a firefighter, and he was actually one of the people called to the scene, and so helped discover it. But the reason that they didn't put him on the stand is because they had the witnesses sequestered, or at least sequestered from the trial, and he had been in attendance of the trial. So they
Gotcha.
said, well, it's done. The witnesses are sequestered, so he didn't really qualify to be a witness. And I think they also felt like he didn't really have that much to add anyway that would have made a difference.
Right.
I found this article that I thought was interesting because I didn't really know what they wanted him to testify about, but there was something about like the theory of a bullet being dislodged, that they wanted to let the jury know that the scene was disturbed during cleaning. I don't know if they did say that in the trial.
No, not that I recall.
By the fire department. So that
Was it by Stan Dean?
well, I don't know, but it was
Stan.
the intention being so that Lyric's mother could visit the scene without blood there. So I don't know what that means, but then they're saying that there was a shell casing that was discussed by the witness Vila that was found on Monday rather than Sunday when the scene was still active.
Right. And he said he did find that near where Devin Clark's red slide is kind of where he described it was in that area, but the
That's
slide
probably why
was no
she
longer
said
there.
That's why she thought he got shot in the foot there, because there was a bullet casing there. But Isaiah's lawyer said he was concerned that the grandfather had been in the audience during the trial, and he also said there was nothing to confirm the theory of the bullet being dislodged.
But what difference would it make if a bullet was dislodged?
I don't know.
Like, she had a certain number of wound tracks. I don't know how that makes a difference to anything.
Yeah. And what I'm looking at was a news station that was doing like updates of things going on in the trial. So there wasn't that much more information about it and not being there. So
I'm curious if his mom was there during trial.
Isaiah's mom.
Yeah.
So I don't know that she was there during trial, but something interesting that happened with his mom is that after the verdict was read, she went live on Facebook, and we'll watch that video too.
Wide eyes again. I'm like, what?
But she was saying things like, I think that the live was titled "We Won," and I mean, because of the mistrial portion of it.
And we also lost.
Right. And, like, well, we'll just see.
But you know what? The black people actually won. You tried to keep Devin's mom from defining her son's body. They had to do all this extra shit. They was the ones to stand up and read their notes. They was the ones to stand up and read their notes. Not y'all white motherfuckers. Your title, your money, your motherfucking skin color, that shit didn't hold no weight, bitch. I'm glad the black people won. They won. They won. They won. We won. Y'all lost. Y'all lost. Y'all lost. Bitch, fuck you. Sick of y'all bitches. Fuck you and suck a motherfucking dick. Matter of fact, you can lick my clit from the back. Bitches on my ass, they be like, whoa. Bitches getting braids from their cousin like, whoa.
Is she a rapper? We need to put this to a tune there.
I feel like this is a song that exists.
You so scared and you so worried about busting your motherfucking guns, but you was singing.
Can you tell that you couldn't wait till this was over?
Sykes! Bitch Sykes! Christian Sykes! Bring your ass to the front! Christian Sykes with your pedophile motherfucking chomo ass! Look, friend, no. That's what Sykes should have said. No, you too young. I don't want none. Whoa. Christian Sykes a motherfucking pedophile like, whoa.
In case you missed it, she said like, whoa.
Like, whoa. Ooh, I forgot. In Isaiah's testimony, they bring up Christian Sykes and asked about their falling out. Did you know about this?
Yeah, uh-huh.
Did you listen to his testimony?
I did.
Yeah. That he talks about, like, he saw Christian giving a blowjob to his cousin.
Like his own cousin.
His own cousin. And that he was grossed out by it. And so he cut off contact. But then the prosecutor was also saying there was a inconsistency because, well, you said you hadn't had anything to do with the cousin for a year or something, but then you were saying that, oh no, well, it was just we had a family gathering, and so it was just a few days before, something that didn't actually add up in her estimation. But I forgot to say that. I think there was the idea of discrediting Christian and making
that
him
Christian
like
might have a reason to say something bad about him.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That does seem to indicate that there was some sort of exchange between Christian and Isaiah, though, because she's calling him a pedo.
Well, yeah, but maybe not towards Isaiah. Maybe she's like, oh, I know something else you did.
Maybe.
I don't think she would be going on about it if it was her son. Probably.
Yeah.
I'm so scared, cause the mafia family is involved in this and they're gonna come after me. Bitch, we not mafia, bitch. We not even close. You ain't scared of shit, but you just keep busting your shit. Bitch, you ain't scared. Cause you just steady singing like a canary. I'm done with holding my shit back. I need to get the fuck up out of here. Fuck all y'all.
Obviously drinking.
I'm scared right now. That's pretty wild. I think he's definitely not guilty. He's not guilty of anything. Because I don't want that mama coming after me.
Right. Yeah, well, so in that video, she's seems to me obviously under the influence of something, you would hope. She's going off about Christian Sykes, off about you're a pedophile and you were so afraid of my family, blah, blah, blah. Like,
but you were up there singing like a canary.
Right. Yeah. Like, whoa. And she said like, whoa a lot.
Like, whoa.
And then she went live again and she went off about Lyric Wood's family and, you know, you lost and your skin color didn't matter here, your money didn't matter, your like status basically didn't matter, and kept going, you know, the black people won, which was Devin's family, right? And you didn't get to read any statements. They got to go up and talk about their son. You didn't get to, and blah, blah, blah. It's kind of weird to me that she's celebrating the other family winning at all, because that does mean that her son was guilty and in jail for 20 to 25 years. But she really had it out for Lyric's family.
I think it's the idea, well, if it's only going to be one or the other...
Right.
It's, you know,
glad it was
like
them, not you.
used to like the white people win if it's a black defendant or a mixed race defendant.
I just don't see any sort of scenario where only the charge for Lyric was guilty and the charge for Devin was not guilty. Like,
yeah,
that
couldn't be
make
that.
any sense. So that was kind of crazy, and like that has nothing to do with him. He, you know, that's his mom. That doesn't have anything to do with him. But that was kind of crazy.
Yeah.
So if they do a second trial, we won't cover it in the same way, but we will do an update if we hear anything about it, or the appeal as well.
Right.
Some interesting things is that there is actually a new law that came into effect called the Lyric and Devin's Law that came after this trial. And it had to do with the fact that they weren't allowed to release Issiah's identity even when they were kind of looking for him because he was a juvenile. And the law changes in North Carolina that they can now if they're a suspect of a murder. So that's kind of interesting.
So if the suspect is still at large and they're trying to locate that individual in the case of murder, they can release a juvenile's name.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
That they can release their information.
So did you say there was some information about Devin and Lyric that you were going to share?
Yes. You know, I feel a little bit conflicted about Devin because there were some not very flattering things that were brought up about him in the trial, right? But I also recognize that he is a person that's multifaceted and there's more to him than what's presented in court, right? That's kind of shows probably the worst of him, right?
Right. Well, and I think here's the thing. If Devin hadn't brought a gun to the scene, this would not have happened.
That's true.
Now, would some other negative event have happened? Possibly, but probably not two people ending up dead.
Right.
So that's unfortunate.
Well, and for me, it was the whole interaction of how he treated women.
Yes,
right. That's the thing that was hard for me, right? But he has people who loves him.
Of course.
And so there's some info about Devin. So he was born on May 5th of 2004 in Alamance County, North Carolina. He was an 18-year-old senior and was a wide receiver. He was number 4 on the team, and he had a nickname, which was Deuce 2 times. I think in reference to 2 times 2 being 4.
That makes sense.
He was described by his school district as a kind-hearted, gentle giant. He had dreams and goals of playing football professionally, but he also loved basketball, rapping, riding bikes and four-wheelers. And
wasn't his username had something to do with basketball, not football?
Yeah, he also played basketball.
Okay.
And I guess another thing that I forgot about the SoundCloud is that Devin followed Issiah on SoundCloud. Devin also raps, but Issiah wasn't following Devin on SoundCloud.
Interesting.
It's kind of interesting. Because Issiah had music he'd put out before all of this as well.
Right.
There were hundreds that attended his vigil at the school stadium, and they were holding signs that said "Fours Up" in his honor. And Lyric, Isabella Woods, to me, is just the most tragic part of this case. I feel So
No
bad.
question.
Just little baby 14-year-old. Was she making probably an unwise decision? Definitely. But it didn't deserve to end up in the way that it did. And I felt so bad for her and her family. She was born on January 18th, 2008. She was a brand new freshman at Cedar Ridge High School in Hillsborough, North Carolina, just starting her freshman year, just days before her death. She had deep roots in the area. Their family had been there for a long time. She was known as funny, warm, and social. Her friends and family saying that she never met a stranger. She was also known for never leaving the house without her eyelashes done, lip gloss on, and her Nike Air Jordans. She loved volleyball, and she had 2 blended families that she was very close to. And then just some information about the grandfather. We mentioned he was a firefighter with Eflin Fire Department. He originally had offered a $10,000 reward on Facebook for any information leading to the killer's capture. And he also built a makeshift memorial near the site of her death with a lighted cross, because Lyric was afraid of the dark. Some potential questions, like what created doubt for those 4 that couldn't get there with Lyric's death? I mean, I think kind of the things we talked about, for me, whether he was being truthful or not, his testimony read as very honest to me.
Same.
And the weird thing is that there's really no evidence in what he says. Like, there's no proof like what an expert witness, and in some ways his testimony should be looked at with the most scrutiny because he has the most to gain by lying and the most to lose if he doesn't do well with this, right?
Does seem to me, though, that the story was already being presented from the very beginning of trial. The prosecutor says that, well, he has the advantage of being able to hear everything that's presented at trial, which is true. However, the story was already told before all of that was heard in trial, and an attorney cannot allow their client to lie if they are aware that what they're saying is not the truth. So he can't change things that he said and contradict earlier statements he made to his attorney.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that it means anything besides of anybody that's who you would want to look at with the most scrutiny, right? But it just read as pretty genuine to me, and I just don't see the motive. For me, it's like the fact that Devin brought the gun feels like there's no forethought for, like, why, where, when does he get the gun?
Yeah, exactly. That's what I was going to say too, is like, yeah, but then what?
Does he even know he has a gun? Why would he know he has a gun? Like, why?
Right. And does he, like, what? When Lyric starts saying, I don't think so, I'm not a whore, I'm not going to do anything, and then he climbs into the car and gets the gun, and then he starts shooting both of them? Because
the only thought I could think, the only thing that you could say would be motive for Issiah would be, well, I was going to get some and now I'm not. And then maybe it's the opposite. He shoots Lyric first and then Devin won't help and then he shoots Devin, but where does he get the gun? But for me, I feel like he's just such an outsider in this that I'm like, why, what motive would he have to kill them? Right. He has no reason to kill them. Right. So for me, that's the biggest thing that I'm like, but why? Why would he kill them? Yeah. And if somebody's killing anybody, it makes more sense that Devin has a reason to kill somebody he's in some sort of relationship with. Right. The only way this story that it's being presented by the state works is he just went off on both of them at the same time. Right. Which, why? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, you're right.
I don't know. It just makes more sense to me that Devin killed Lyric. And then why would Issiah kill Devin besides the fact that he just killed somebody and he might kill me? And then how does he get the gun if Devin did kill Lyric? So
right. Yeah, I don't know. Like I said, I found Issiah believable on the stand. I felt like he was given a lot of random detail and talking about things and
not in a way to me, because I agree with you, and not in a way that to me sounded like we've talked about. Sometimes people who are lying do add a lot of random details in there, but they didn't feel like random details, but things that it's like, that's really weird, but it kind of makes sense. Right. And where would you even think of that if it wasn't true?
Right. Yeah, I agree.
He wasn't the owner of the gun. So I don't know how the gun would have been introduced into his hands for the killing of both of them.
Right.
I feel for him, and if he did do this, if he just wanted to kill them and just did with no reason to do so, then I hope he gets what he deserves. And, I think it all comes out in the wash, I guess. And
Right. But I think it is one of those things that if he was like, I wonder what it's like to kill people, then he would be the one bringing the gun when Devin invites him to come and he's like,
or setting
maybe.
up the meeting, or like he
Right.
didn't set up this whole outing. He was doing a favor for Devin.
Right.
Did he maybe think he was going to get something out of it too? Sure. But he wasn't trying to get people together so he could kill them. He didn't bring a weapon. He didn't know Lyric. And I don't think he knew Devin enough to want to kill him. So I think I would have to maybe go with the voluntary manslaughter if I were coming up with a charge on this one. Even that, I don't know. Maybe I don't understand the definitions of the charge that well, but I do feel like if we're talking about what's the difference between voluntary manslaughter and self-defense in this case is maybe the excessive amounts of shots. And I could see an argument for that. But to me, I also see someone, if what he's saying happened is what happened, I also see someone who just watched someone kill someone.
Right.
And I don't know that I would have any sort of forethought or thought in my brain of, to me, it's a panic self-defense moment if that's what happened.
So it says the state must prove the defendant didn't act in self-defense in order to convict of first or second degree murder, which I do think that is hard if you are hung on Lyric. And then it's like, well, then what's the cause for him to be shooting Devin? But it says, however, may convict of voluntary manslaughter if proved that the defendant used excessive force. So that's where both of us came down, where when I listened to him before listening to the closing arguments, I felt like, okay, I feel like voluntary manslaughter fits. So, I mean, the defining part of that is the defendant didn't act in self-defense, or though acting in self-defense, used excessive force under the circumstances.
Right, and I feel that the circumstances maybe warranted the amount of force. And if you're shooting the gun one or two times in kind of a panic, I don't know.
I mean, if he's running away and if the distance that he ran is kind of significant, you have your vehicle right there. You shoot him a couple times, you get in your car, and you drive away. That's what I think it's like. Well, he didn't have to shoot him 6 times. He's running away from you, even if he shot and killed Lyric. So for me, I mean, if it all happened right there in front of the car, and it's like 6 shots, boom, 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 and he's laying there in front of the car, but that's not where he was. So it didn't happen that fast.
Right.
He might be a fast runner, but he's probably not that fast of a runner to get 6 shots in and him run a distance. So I do think that there is a strong argument for saying, well, I think maybe even if it was self-defense, might be appropriate to say voluntary manslaughter.
Yeah, I could see that. I guess I just have a hard time for those 4 jurors who couldn't get there on Lyric's first-degree murder. How could they then agree with second-degree murder for Devin? It doesn't make sense. I feel like it's got to be guilty of first-degree on both accounts, or you believe not guilty of Lyric's murder and then guilty of voluntary manslaughter for Devin's murder.
Yeah.
And I think... And maybe just because there's a mistrial doesn't mean that these 4 jurors were convinced that he was not guilty of Lyric's death, but it does mean that at the very least they felt that there was enough reasonable doubt and they felt that they couldn't say definitively that he did.
Yeah.
So
I do feel that way too, that I feel like there's enough doubt that's in there that I can see saying, well, I think maybe we have to find not guilty on hers because maybe it wasn't him. I don't know. I mean, I think if you were convinced of the prosecutor's story in the closing arguments that he was shooting at both of them as they were trying to run away, then that's the one situation that you could say, okay, then we're talking guilty of first-degree murder on both counts, right? But you have to be strongly convinced that that is what happened and not have any reasonable doubt. And I think, maybe I could get to that point if I looked at all the evidence and I really felt like, oh yeah, it all adds up to supporting what the prosecutor is saying, then I probably would say, okay, yeah, guilty on both counts, first-degree murder, or I could go to second degree on both of them too, because how much premeditation and whatever, I don't know.
There was no option for
No,
second.
there wasn't. But I
Lyric.
do think that's the only situation where you easily get to murder on both counts. But I do think there's enough possibility that maybe he's not the one that shot Lyric, that there's reasonable doubt there. But nobody else shot Devin. We know Issiah shot Devin, so then it's just what charge do you feel is appropriate?
Right. And I guess I feel like there's enough reasonable doubt in both first and second degree for Devin that I feel like it's enough reasonable doubt to not convict. And I think that's kind of the interesting thing to think about too about being a member of a jury, is that the option is, I don't think that there's reasonable doubt, that like if there are doubts, they're not reasonable. That they're like throwing random things at a wall. Like, could a random person have come in and killed both of them?
Like,
okay, yes, I guess, but
is there an area that's trampled down in the woods and you have cigarette butts of someone lying in wait and whatever.
It was
Jad-easy. True. That old Jad-easy.
Yeah, whoever you are. But it is that it's either it's enough for guilty or it's not guilty, because the mistrial happens when people can't agree, not when we all decide, I don't think we can decide between the two.
Right.
When we all decide, I don't know, so let's
then
just
that would
say
be not guilty.
So let's just say mistrial and let them do it again. So 8 of them were convinced of his guilt. 4 of them were convinced that there was enough reasonable doubt.
Yeah. To me, you could swing between second-degree murder and voluntary manslaughter, depending on if you believe malice and excessive force was used. So I do think you could make an argument for that, even if you believe that Devin shot Lyric, that there's still room to go one way or the other, because the reasoning that you can decide whether it's with malice or premeditation, like those are all things that are more subjective. So you have some wiggle room in deciding if you feel like that's true, or if you're like, I don't think that's true, but I do think he used excessive force. So, it really could go either way depending on the way you interpret the circumstances, but I just don't think there's a way to make a guilty verdict with Lyric. I think there's enough opening for doubt that I don't know if they'll ever get a guilty verdict.
Right. So actually the dominant reaction online is actually more outrage over the second-degree verdict on Clark and the mistrial on Lyric. So more people, I think, are leaning towards first degree on both accounts.
Really?
Yeah. Because of the prosecution's argument that both victims were shot from the back, I think that resonated with a lot of people. So they thought, well, if they're running away, then it has to be, first degree. Yeah. And then, like, some people kind of identified with the theory that, okay, we're like, well, what's the motive for killing Lyric? But that would actually go back more to Christian Sykes' testimony, and something along the lines of he actually killed Devin first instead of Lyric being killed first, and then Lyric was killed because basically everything that happened, but almost people's roles being reversed, right?
Right.
Killing Lyric because she saw.
Right. And what motive would Christian have of saying something different than what he was told? So, I think that is something that you really do have to consider, but I didn't find him to be a reliable witness at all.
Right. Well, and you could say, well, maybe it's the same idea, but not the way that happened. But then you're like, well, why did he kill Devin? So
right.
And then it's like, what reason would he have to do that? And again, Devin brought the gun. So
right. I mean, there's just so much that's like, okay, well, if they were outside of the car together and Devin's messing around with the gun, and then, that struggle ensues.
And then the killing of Devin is an accident.
Well, but he's running away. So it's not like, because almost every shot that hits Devin is from the back. And that's why I think you could go to second degree, right? Mm-hmm. With even if it was after Lyric.
Yeah.
But it's like Lyric does have more that are front or angled, like she's turning.
Yeah, and you think that if Devin was killed first, she probably would be running already.
Right, yeah.
So I think that probably the most of the public's frustration with all of it is that there feels like there's no justice for Lyric.
Sure.
Which I totally understand, but I don't believe that a wrongful conviction would be justice for Lyric either.
Right.
So I believe she does deserve justice. Unfortunately, I lean more towards I think that Devin was the one who killed her, and there's not going to be...
got immediate justice
right.
for that.
If there's any justice, it's not one that the family, I think, is finding any comfort in, and and they're not going to know. You can't try a dead person, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I think that's hard because I think a lot of families feel like when they get a guilty verdict that they're going to feel some sense of relief, but most times families say, yeah, they are glad, but there's still that loss. It still doesn't fix that. And I think they're also disappointed that it doesn't relieve as much as they thought it would. So I think imagining that, oh, we could have had this feeling, but we are robbed of it.
The feeling that may not even actually exist.
Exactly, right. Yeah. It's the idea of a feeling that they haven't experienced, that they think they can, but most families that do get guilty verdicts also don't experience the feeling they thought they would when they got that verdict. So I don't know.
Yeah, I just think, again, just sad. It's sad for Lyric and the situation that she was in. And, you know, I remember what it's like to be 14 years old and getting a lot of validation out of recognition from boys. And, you know, I don't blame her at all, really, for the events. And if anybody, I mean, Devin was technically 18. He's still in high school, so it feels a little different. Like, I feel like somebody who turns 18 at the beginning of their senior year and somebody turns 18 at the end of their senior year aren't that different from each other. But legally, there's no distinction. So,
yeah. I don't know. It just does highlight the precarious nature of the teenage years and that small, seemingly insignificant decisions can have significant effects, right? And no teenager foresees that type of outcome. And I'm just so grateful that all my kids survived their teenage years, but I don't think any teenager survives those years without some scars, and some people worse scars than others, and some people don't make it out for these very reasons. So
it's true. Really sad. And I'll be following the results of the appeal or the retrial closely. And we're interested in hearing what you think. Do you agree with the jury? Do you agree with our thoughts on it? Or do you think the jury was too lenient? Do you think that the jury should have gone all the way with Lyric and Devin?
Yeah, I do encourage you to go listen to his testimony if you haven't, see what you think. And I think listening to the closing arguments and seeing, does one swing you, significantly? Are you convinced by what is said? But I think those are the two deciding factors, are Issiah's testimony and the prosecutor's closing arguments. I don't know, no easy answers here.
No.
But we're so appreciative that you've chosen to spend this time hanging out with us. And we hope that you'll choose to come back next week and hear what is in store on our next case.
That's right. Well, I'm Marin.
I'm Christy.
And you've been listening to Hung.